Good evening, my fellow Americans.
Take the red pill.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars.
The disastrous rise of misplaced power exists.
All we have built, all we have worked for, would be destroyed.
There is nothing the political establishment will not do.
And this nation will not be fully free until all its citizens are free.
Our arms must be mighty, ready for instant action,
These criminals cannot be rewarded.
so that no potential aggressor may be tempted to risk his own destruction.
There is a point beyond which they must not advance.
They're coming after you, and I'm just standing in their way. Here I am.
You and I have a rendezvous with destiny.
The cost of freedom is always high.
Those who had the most to lose did the least to prevent its happening.
Our movement is about replacing a failed and corrupt political establishment.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
This is a crusade! This is a holy war against the deep state!
We never wanted to be right, but yet things are all adding up to the firestorm.
America is a land of heroes, a place where greatness is born, where destinies are forged, and where legends come to life. This is the home of Thomas Edison and Teddy Roosevelt, of many great generals, including Washington, Pershing, Patton, and MacArthur. This is the home of Abraham Lincoln, Frederick Douglass, Amelia Earhart, Harriet Tubman, the Wright brothers, Neil Armstrong, and so many more. This is the country where children learn names like Wyatt Earp, Davy Crockett, and Annie Oakley. This is the place where the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth and where Texas patriots made their last stand at the Alamo. The American nation was carved out of the vast frontier by the toughest, strongest, fiercest, and most determined men and women ever to walk on the face of the earth. Our ancestors braved the unknown, tamed the wilderness, settled the Wild West, lifted millions from poverty, disease, and hunger, vanquished tyranny and fascism, ushered the world to new heights of science and medicine, laid down the railroads, dug out the canals, raised up the skyscrapers. Our ancestors built the most exceptional republic ever to exist in all of human history, and we are making it greater than ever before. This is our glorious and magnificent inheritance. We are Americans. We are pioneers. We are the pathfinders. We settled the new world. We built the modern world, and we changed history forever by embracing the eternal truth that everyone is made equal by the hand of Almighty God. America is the place where anything can happen. America is the place where anyone can rise. And here, on this land, on this soil, on this continent, the most incredible dreams come true. This nation is our canvas, and this country is our masterpiece. We look at tomorrow and see unlimited frontiers just waiting to be explored. Our brightest discoveries are not yet known. Our most thrilling stories are not yet told. Our grandest journeys are not yet made. The American age, the American epic, the American adventure has only just begun. Our spirit is still young. The sun is still rising. God's grace is still shining. And my fellow Americans, the best is yet to come.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. My name is Josh. Welcome to the Red Pill Project's Daily Dose, live with you Monday through Thursday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is where we bring you that unfolding a global conspiracy, and a conspiracy it is, man. I'm loving how all of this is kind of all flowing and coming together. It's an amazing time to be alive. And I keep on telling myself, the best is yet to come. The best is yet to come. And I truly do believe that we have the potential for the best of America, for America First. And so tonight we're talking about the America First agenda. We're going to be talking about a lot of what Donald Trump is doing with his cabinet picks. We're going to be talking a lot about what is happening in the world in so many different ways and lights. I found one of the most interesting things that we've seen today. Have you guys heard this? Leftist conspiracy theorists about the 2024 election are claiming that Elon Musk stole the election with Starlink. with zero evidence whatsoever. I mean, you got to give it to them. They turned into us from 2020. But yet at least we had proof. So kind of interesting right there. We are seeing a lot of confirmation on many different fronts. I'm going to be bringing on my guest here. He just joined up. We got Royce White coming on. This is a Senate candidate from Minnesota. He's a former NBA player as well as a staunch American First supporter and a very vocal voice out here in Minnesota and throughout the country on what we need to do to help and fix our country. So we're going to be bringing him in just a second. But I wanted to kind of bring this to everybody's attention. Tomorrow is the UAP hearings that are in Congress. I have not been in contact with any of my friends, if you want to call them that, although I'm pretty sure hopefully I'll hear something tomorrow. If there's a classified part of the hearing, we will be hearing some information. So pay attention to that. There is a space coming out on the 14th, I believe it is. On the 14th with Mario Newall on X. And I probably will be on that space as a speaker. So watch out for that. I'm looking forward to that. And we're going to talk about, hopefully in a little while, some of the little things that I'm seeing with these cabinet picks and how that might pertain to a lot of that information. But let's go ahead and bring Royce on. Royce, what's up, man? How we doing?
Oh, man, I'm great. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Glad to finally have you on, man.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to get with other patriots. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So talk to me, man. We just had this.
Where do you want to start?
Well, that's where I wanted to go. Is talk to me about the election, your thoughts. Kind of. I mean, you had the GOP nomination.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You went into this incredibly confident because I think you should have been. Minnesota almost flipped completely red. We were very close this time.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the election after everything's over and done?
Well, I got a lot of thoughts about it. My podcast will be on at 9 p.m. here on YouTube, so that people can watch. And I go a 2-hour rant, no notes, because that's just how I do things. But yeah, I got a lot of thoughts about the election, the national or here locally with the Senate race. Which one you want to tackle first?
Let's go both sides. Let's first talk about locally with the Senate race, and then we can expand.
Yeah, well, locally, I think a lot of things happened. I think we saw the real face of the Uniparty in my race from the day I was endorsed at the Minnesota GOP convention. The very next day or in the days that followed, the Star Tribune immediately went to work by smearing my character, as they obviously do, as they did with Donald Trump so many times. And they started to prop up my opponent, which is strange because it's not like anybody who has any sense whatsoever would conceivably believe, would even start to believe that the Star Tribune has any interest whatsoever in what the Republican Party is doing or offering to the people of Minnesota or anywhere else. The Star Tribune is a staunch liberal and I would say communist newspaper. So for them to prop up my primary opponent should have told everybody everything they needed to know about my opponent. In many ways, it probably did. In some ways, it didn't. We still have a lot of people who listen to the mainstream media. So that was one element. And then, all the other mainstream media outlets followed. You had the New York Times, you had the Washington Post. I actually had Michelle Goldberg, who wrote the huge op-ed hit piece regarding the women are mouthy, comment that I made on Bannon's podcast. And so the mainstream media, went to work, which is already troublesome because I was starting at such an economic disadvantage, right, with the money.
Yeah.
Amy Klobuchar had an $18 million war chest. We were just starting off. We had about 150 grand when I won the endorsement, or at the time of actually we won the primary with 150 grand and only volunteer staff. Wow. So they're just a huge success by any metrics. And then we went into the general, and we just recently crossed over 1.2 million dollars in the last couple of weeks of the campaign as it started to come to a head. So the interesting thing isn't what happened with the liberal media, the mainstream media, national, local. The interesting thing is what happened with the Republican Party, as is the story of many of these campaigns all across the country. Number one, the National Republican Party didn't offer any help or support. The NRSC, which is headed up, the chairman is Steve Daines, who's a rhino, extraordinaire. One of Mitchell McConnell's lapdogs for sure. He continued to say all the way up to the primary, I don't think Royce can even win the primary, let alone the general and so on and so forth. And they just again, the Star Tribune and these other liberal media outlets kept going back to him, and he kept talking and basically, knocking the Minnesota Republican delegates that endorsed me at a 68% clip, by the way. I mean, it wasn't even a close endorsement process. So, the National Republican Party, Republican side, was against me from day one. So I had to fight both sides of the aisle all the way up until Election Day. And I think a lot of that is reflected in what you saw, the results. Now, the results, I don't trust the numbers. And I don't trust the numbers for a lot of reasons. One, Hennepin County was forced by the Supreme Court, the Minnesota Supreme Court, to seat Republican election judges just 7 days before the election. So, I mean, Hennepin County, which is Minnesota's biggest county, wasn't even going to sit our Republican judges unless the Supreme Court forced them to do it. So that tells you about who we're dealing with in the state of Minnesota and down in the cities. So I don't trust the numbers on face value, but also something very interesting. Elections can be strange, and I tend to believe some of the numbers are cooked, but also, Minnesota is an odd place because you got these 4 Congress members that represent rural Minnesota. You got Emmer, you got Stauber, you got Finstad, and you got Fishbach, and then you got the concentration of the Democrat stronghold on the inner city side or the metropolitan area, and yeah, I mean, from day one, even I never heard from any of the Congress members. I ran into Stauber out there on the campaign trail as he was out there campaigning in his area. I've never talked to Michelle Fishbach once. I never talked to Emmer. I never really talked to Finstad. And I don't know these people. I don't have a problem with these people. But the Star Tribune asked them as well if they would get behind me and endorse me and support me in my race. And they said they were worried about their own races, which was basically, a vote for Amy. And it sent that message to their constituents, I would say. And although I still won in outstate, Minnesota handily, 68 counties of 87 counties, I underperformed Donald Trump. And all of them, they bent the knee and they came and they kissed the ring of Donald Trump and acted like they were Trumpers. I don't believe one of them. I don't believe any of them, and that's just my honest opinion. And I know a little bit more about the insider baseball of the Minnesota Republican Party than most would know. Right. But, ultimately, there is a strong contingent of Minnesota Republicans that would have rather seen a Nikki Haley. They would have rather, and I'm talking about in the party, right? Maybe some of the voters too, but more so in the party and then a little cohort of the voters. But they would have rather seen a Haley or a DeSantis. They said that Donald Trump was a bad candidate. They said that Donald Trump had too much baggage. He couldn't appeal to the moderates and independents, the middle of the road voters. And I'm sure a lot of them felt obligated to vote for Donald Trump, but thought, hey, we can take it out. That doesn't mean we have to vote for Royce. And so that's something that we got to continue to work on as we push on into 26 and 28.
Yeah, you made some good points there, and one of the things I want to stress, we're seeing massive amounts of problems with the ballots in the sense of all these states and the downvotes. Is Donald Trump is getting a significant amount of votes, but we're seeing senatorial races, for instance, Kerry Lake in Arizona, which are surpassing the amount of votes for Kamala Harris.
Same with Amy, right?
And the Democrats are winning. And the same thing here is what you're talking about is I don't know how people can go in there and they only vote for Donald Trump and they don't do anything else on the downvote. It makes no sense. But then you have Emmer's or, a congressman's numbers that will surpass that. And so there's this correlation that, like, are they just skipping this one race or is there something more going on here? And I think the thing is that there is more going on here that, I've said this for the longest time, Royce, that we had the Uni Party, we had the left and the right wing of the same bird. That in 2020, the majority of the Republicans, the staunch neoconservatives were rhinos, were just as much in on the voter fraud and election fraud as the Democrats. And they were securing their seats as well through the same process. So there's no reason to uncover it because then they are going to lose power. What are your thoughts?
Don't say the quiet part out loud. I mean, who would trust these people? I don't trust these people. Look,
Nope.
The entire time, and there's two cohorts here. There's the Never Trumpers, right? There's the Nikki Haley and some of the DeSantis crowd and the Chris Christies and the Bushes. I mean, we got the staunch McConnell, and some John Thune, and these people were Never Trumpers, public, open about it. Then you got this other echelon in there that want to play the fence, right? And Tom Emmer's in there, right? At one point, Tom Emmer was almost, you could say, safely in the Never Trump category, but he kind of phased his way back into supporting Donald Trump because he had to. His constituency down there in CD6 are going MAGA. I know that because I had overwhelming support in Carver County, not only during the state convention, but also at the BPOU conventions, and then there in the primary as well. I got huge support there in Carver County in Emmer's district. So these people are MAGA. I mean, these people, for the most part, they believe in a genuine America First position. So Tom Emmer couldn't really undercut Donald Trump or challenge or go against Donald Trump publicly. It makes total sense that the Republicans or some Republicans all across the country would be in on the cheating and to their benefit. And the ultimate benefit is they get paid either way to play Washington Generals. That's what people got to realize. They get paid one way or the other. They get paid to lose. They get paid if they win. In fact, they're probably taking a real handsome pay. I'll give you another example of this. One of the things that I went back and thought about over the last week or so is the Minnesota. Let's think about Minnesota as an ag state, right?
Okay.
And I respect the farmers a great deal, but as Kissinger said, he who controls the food controls the greatest policy, right? The greatest policy is food. The people who control the food control the people, right? And Minnesota's an ag state. Yep. And so you saw this strange thing happen in my race where the Minnesota Farmers Bureau endorsed candidates. They endorsed the four horsemen, I call them, Finstad, Stauber, Fischbach, and Emmer. But then they endorsed Klobuchar and Angie Craig. I mean, I don't think there's a greater example of a uniparty play than the Minnesota Farmers Bureau. And I'm not saying that to knock the farmers. I'm just saying we see in union groups and sort of, collectively bargained or bureaus and places like things like that, like the Farmers Bureau, but the police union as well. These people kind of play a uniparty game. And I just think to myself, in what world does a farmer in the state of Minnesota see Amy Klobuchar as anything other than the decrepit globalist scam selling our rear end to China and BlackRock and other multinational corporations, then that's exactly who she is. But we face a dire sort of spiritual, philosophical problem in this country and in the state of Minnesota where even our farmers, who we would believe, who in some instances voted for Trump, and we would believe have a more based sense of being an American citizen and what patriotism is all about. Well, of course, some of the Minnesota farmers didn't like my rhetoric because they know if we add tariffs, then their food that goes to China or anywhere else in the world runs into some problems. Or at least maybe that's what they think, that if you stop globalism, then the Minnesota ag industry also gets damaged and hurt. And so in that way, even some of our farmers are on the payroll and they would back an Amy Klobuchar. I mean, it's just, the thing runs deep. But the Farmers Bureau showed me so much. It means Angie Craig. In what world do you find, like, even if you think, hey, Angie Craig, Amy Klobuchar, they were a part of the Farm Bill. And when you go read about on the Farm Bill, it's so ironic. Some of the early legislation from Amy Klobuchar's website regarding the Farm Bill brags about her bipartisan work with John Thune. I mean, you can go right to her site and her Farm Bill, information openly brags about bipartisan work with John Thune. And maybe there's some Minnesotans and farmers who think that that's necessary, but that is exactly what brought this country to its knees. Look, I'm so confident and excited to get back out on the trail. I mean, right now, right away, and go minister to these people and talk to these people about the truth and try and get them to see the reality of what's going on. Look, the farmers in Minnesota and all the rest of the country are being squeezed out. I mean, even if it's a slow squeeze, even if they're subsidizing and they have these safety net subsidy programs and all of these things that sort of, create insurance for the farmers, kind of a safety net, a federally funded safety net, which in some ways the farmers are on the same sort of welfare plan that the black folks are in down in the city. Only difference is when you're a farmer, you actually have to go work out in the field, and that's a much different than waking up in some Section 8 housing and having no job and being on welfare. So there is a distinction to be made. But at the highest level, getting people on the payroll has the same net result. They're unwilling to challenge the status quo, and that's what we have to fix in this country.
Well, you're right. And a lot of what we're talking about here for everybody out there is that the federal government over the last 50 to 60 years has utilized taxpayer dollars to go into these states and subsidize all of the major production within those states, whether it's agriculture, manufacturing, processing, it doesn't matter. They go in there and subsidize. What this does is this basically takes the states and make them a slave to the federal government to where those businesses, those farms, have no other way out other than acquiescing to whoever is in control of the various different NGOs or NPOs that are organized around them that are their voice. And that system needs to stop. That system needs to change. We need to eradicate that system specifically because that is the way that this country will be pushed into Marxism.
Well, I mean, it's, that, my friend, is not a theory. That is exactly what's going on. And, it's almost unbelievable to me. Like, if I look at Emmer and Amy Klobuchar, right, they're two different sides of the same coin. What's the number one danger for our country, our nation, for our nation's security, for our prosperity, for our well-being, for our sovereignty, our sort of self-governance? The number one danger is the debt bomb, right? And it's not even what's even more scary is that we actually can get through the debt. The problem is the perception of currency in our fractional reserve banking system and this sort of this layered, multi-layered system that rests upon this debt-based currency. People believe in it. They believe in it so much, and it has so much steam, so much momentum, so much widely held faith. You could say that at any moment they could say that the market crashes, or that the market has crashed, or that the power of the dollar has gone down, or whatever the case may be, and people will buy it. Now part of the reason why it will trigger such a chaotic crisis is because the way fractional reserve banking works fundamentally. I mean, you think you got $20,000 or $400,000 or $100,000 or $700 sitting there in your bank account, but the bank doesn't hold that cash. I mean, the bank is sitting there with 10% of whatever the cash balance is for the institution. And the rest of it is sitting there on a computer at the Fed, and the Fed is, so it's just, all the way down you got turtles. And the reality is, when you look at Amy and Emmer, what are they both good at? They're both good at spending money, raising the debt ceiling, increasing the perception of the debt bomb crisis that we face now. And the entire country is in on it. It's not just the farmers or certain industries, it's individuals. People who have 401ks. I mean, these people actually believe they have a 401k sitting there. And it's just like, yeah, if you're a child and you don't even understand the rudimentaries of finance, yeah, you believe that there's some 401k there. And they may be able to print enough money to actually pay your 401k out, but then the cost of everything else is going to be inflated. So you're actually getting hosed on the 401k.
And your taxes upon that. And
Yes.
then people should be asking the question, why is it that a one-term congressman or one-term senator are put into a better pension plan that any American has under their 401k? And why are they passing these systems for themselves, but not for any of us?
Yes.
Going into the economic system, 100%, we are beyond a system of repair. There needs to be some type of new system integrated, brought about.
Yeah.
I think that we will see that within our lifetimes. I think we are headed towards that. We have the BRICS nations on the rise up right now with their new payment system, with their new monetary system that is being implemented.
Yeah.
We have Donald Trump going to try to rebirth the dollar. I believe it's going to be a digital version. I think that this is also one of the reasons why Emmer supports Donald Trump now, is because of the crypto aspect. Emmer has been really staunch on crypto, been trying to get that passed through. On the other side of the house, we have Donald Trump now going to be inaugurated, let's hope, January 20th, 2025. He's making a lot of different appointments into his cabinet. Today, he just announced Vivek Ramaswamy, Elon Musk coming into the Department of Government Efficiency. I think that is going to be a huge, huge deal if they can actually eliminate 85% of the federal jobs and federal bureaucracy. That does bring about, well, what about those people? Where are they going to go to work? I really don't care, but still brings about that question. And then on the other side of this is that the tariffs and the taxes and what's going to happen with that whole system. So I want to hear your thoughts on those.
What position did Ramaswamy get in the administration?
Him and Elon are going to
government efficiency.
Yep, government efficiency.
I like it. Yeah, that's good. Look, the scariest thing outside of the debt bomb is this idea that the federal government is going to grow until the point where it accounts for most of the new jobs and most of the GDP. I mean, that is a sort of shoehorn way to ensure that the federal government will undermine the value of citizenship, the sovereignty of states and local communities, and even down to the individual. So yeah, we got to shrink this federal government, and we got to do it quick. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. When the federal government is the number one producer of new jobs, you already have a problem. You're already living in a sort of quasi tyrannical state. So that's something that we certainly got to do. In terms of a new economic, well, first of all, let's talk about the tariffs. The tariffs you got to do. I mean, the Henry Kissingers of the world, the globalists, the Mika Brzezinskis, and I say Mika because she's the living heir to Zygmunt, right? And she's paired in the same talking points on MSNBC every day. That is the railhead of the world order, MSNBC. But those people sold us out so bad, it's almost scary. It's terrifying. It's even more terrifying that your average American citizen has no clue. I mean, when I said that we live under the post-World War II Democrat liberal order and the bad guys won World War II, people's heads exploded. That I maybe have lost 50,000 votes there because there's so many gum-dipped boomers in America, that don't understand. They're living under a geopolitical doctrine that was meant to crush them from the very beginning, and it has crushed them. Now, some of them may not feel the pinch of that sinister plot, but they will if the 401k runs dry. Essentially they're feeling it anyway. Slow. It's that's how communist works. It's like a slow draw, right? It's bleeding you dry, slow. Jordan Peterson said it great one time. He goes, a Nazi in a dark alley, a Nazi is the one who knife you and take your wallet in a dark alley. A communist will steal your pension, right? And that's a great way to put it. So yeah, the tariffs, the globalization, the sort of free trade, free market, global enterprise scam. It's all a scam. It's all based on entangling foreign markets and convincing the people in Europe they need the cobalt from the Congo, and Americans we need the wheat from Ukraine, and blah blah. We need the oil from the Qataris, and I mean it's just one big international fugazi. We don't need any of it. We have more than everything we need here. What everybody else has to do in their part of the world is their business. But the tariffs we have to put on to try and reel in how stretched thin we are globally.
Yep. And so for everybody out there who doesn't understand how the tariffs work, the tariff cost is going to be put onto the consumer. And that's okay, because we have to look at it in the sense that these corporations with a year's notice of understanding that Donald Trump is going to be coming back in the office, knowing that Donald Trump is going to implement 100%, 200% tariffs on countries like Mexico, on China, so forth. What that does is gets them to start planning out different types of strategies to bring jobs back to the United States of America. The objective of the Donald Trump administration is to bring as many jobs in manufacturing, processing, so forth back into the United States of America, and then reduce the price of consumer goods and services because there is production happening in our own country, plus competition in the market. So you have an increase of supply, then increase of supply, increase of demand, your price is going to drop. But everybody out there, I see in the chat right now, people are saying, oh, well, tariffs are going to raise prices. Yeah, absolutely. They're going to raise prices on imported goods. So if you have a $40,000 EV from China coming into California and someone's going to pay $80,000 for that with a 100% tariff, that $40,000 excess is going to be given to the consumer. But they're going to look at that $80,000 EV in California, and they're going to look at a Tesla Model S for $60,000, and they're going to go, what's the difference here besides $20,000 in price point? The difference is one was made in America, the other one was made in China, and that consumer is always going to go towards that one that's a $20,000 discount, which is going to put that one company in a massive pinch to where they're going to have to make changes and moves really, really fast and bring production back to the United States just to be competitive within that market. And that's the objective of tariffs. Although it typically operates over a long period of time, we want that to be 2 to 4 to 6 years out when you start really seeing that, because they have to build manufacturing and processing plants back here in the United States of America. You have to do the hiring, you have to get the creation aspect of it done. But if we do have a long-term America First agenda that is in place, at least for the next 8 to 12 years, we have a really, really good chance of transforming that whole economic model of how that worked when Bill Clinton screwed it up in the 1990s with NAFTA and GATT.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And he did it on purpose. I mean, this is the doctrine that they live by. It blows my mind that Minnesotans would vote for Amy Klobuchar, and she goes to New York City and takes a picture in the apartment of Alex Soros. And right now you can go find a YouTube video of his dad, George Soros, publicly saying that the value of the dollar must depreciate so that China, although a much smaller economy, is much more efficient for their global agenda. And he just said it outright. I mean, we have to depreciate the value of the dollar. And if you look at the purchasing power of the dollar since the inception of the Fed, you can't go back and retrospectively observe the trend of the dollar and not think, at least conceivably, that the Fed was instituted specifically to decrease the purchasing power of the dollar. I mean, the decrease in the purchasing power of the dollar and the inception of the Fed is so one-to-one. I think that's what the Fed is there to do. And my point is, these people at bare minimum, they're so incompetent. I mean, the results of what they've done is so obvious. They certainly shouldn't be They certainly shouldn't be trusted with any of the institutions. They certainly shouldn't be trusted with this country or the economy. But I actually think it was on purpose. I mean, you can't tell me both things can't be true. They can't be economic experts and it not be on purpose. Now, if you're going to tell me that they were never really economic experts, that they were their whole accreditation or their credentials were a scam, I could almost believe that because the accreditation process in this country is so fugazi in the first place. But some of these people are very smart. I mean, some of these economic people are very smart. The Jerome Powells of the world, they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. They rose the interest every time every time they raise the interest rates. All they're doing is crushing the small businesses in the middle market. Anybody who needed a bank loan or a bank note in order to have working capital and cash flow to operate their business, small business or even middle market business, all they're doing is squeezing the cash and squeezing the market share up to the top of the pyramid. It's horrifying. I wake
It's
up
a
in the middle
Ponzi
of the night in
scheme.
cold sweats sometimes because your average American citizen is so gum dipped in this BS globalist narrative. It's crazy.
Well, it's a Ponzi scheme, and to
Yeah.
the highest regard. I mean, you have the reverse repo markets, which go out there, they buy up corporate debt off of Wall Street to artificially pump up the markets and bring back money to these big corporations, mega conglomerates, and that money is printed out of thin air by the Fed. It doesn't go onto the national debt. During COVID, they printed up hundreds of billions of dollars a week for over 20 weeks straight of money that never was created on paper. They just pumped it into the reverse repo markets, allowing the buy up of all of these debt bonds from these corporations to keep these corporations alive. And nobody once says that because that money is now back out in circulation. You mentioned interest rates. Interest rates in the United States, we always had where employers would give a 4% raise somewhere around every 2 to 4 years to their employees. And this was an inflationary hedge. The reason is because you typically have about 4% devaluing of the dollar, 1% every year. As long as you had a rising GDP, 3.5%, 4% GDP each year, that hedged the inflationary aspect of things. But every 4 years, you would have to kind of give everybody a little bit of a raise to add more money into the system.
Right.
When we start looking at what's happening now is that system is taking off like a lightning bolt in the opposite direction to hyperinflation. We've been in a process of stagflation for the last 2 years. This is where you have decreasing GDP and increasing inflation. And the increasing inflation came about because the Fed, they raised interest rates, but they should have raised interest rates to match actual consumer inflation prices, which is approximately 19 to 24%.
Right.
But they didn't. They only brought it up to about 50% of that, maybe 40% of that. And what that's going to do is it's going to slow down the inflation. But I think in the process over the last 4 years, what they were hoping to do is do enough damage so that BRICS nations could abandon as much as a dollar as possible to produce an economic quandary over the next few years that we really can't get ourselves out of. And then what you said about the Federal Reserve, I'm going to add another part in there. It was absolutely 100% intentional. But one of the other points, besides devaluing the dollar, was a massive wealth transference.
Right.
And coming out of the 19th century, Americans were incredibly wealthy. There was massive amounts of wealth throughout the United States of America. The Federal Reserve Act comes in. We have the Roaring 20s. Why did we have the Roaring 20s? Because the Federal Reserve printed massive amounts of money, interest-free, and they couldn't give it away. They were giving it to banks, and banks were like, nobody wants it. The banks had to give it away at 0% interest to all of these business owners, all of these farmers, so forth. And they did it and said, look, 0% interest, but we were going to collateralize your land. And they're like, well, it's my family's land. I'm producing. It should be good. No problem here. And it's a 20-year loan, so they'd pay it back. Well, this was what the Fed wanted all along, because what happened throughout the 20s, all of these massive landowners throughout the United States that had massive amounts of wealth took out these interest-free loans from the banks, which was really Fed money. Well, in 1929, when everything collapsed and JP Morgan and his buddies called in all those loans, they didn't have the money to pay them back. The small banks got taken over by the larger banks, and the people who had the loans, the only thing that they had to give up was the collateralization. So you had this massive wealth transference of actual real estate into the hands of the bankers. Well, it's no surprise that right after the 1929 stock market crash, we go into the Great Depression. Why? Because
and the First World War as well.
Yeah, well, the Second World War. And
Right.
the reason, and one of the
The
points I
Second
want
World
to,
War. I'm sorry, the Second World.
yeah,
There's only been one war. There was one great world war. But the point I made is because the reason I say the First World War, Second World War, but that was the advent of Nazi Germany,
yep,
right? I mean, we told the Germans that we would pay their reparations for them. We floated them the cash, we floated them the money to pay back their reparations from World War One, and that's what Hitler used during his rise to power there in Germany, and saying these American financiers and Jewish bankers, these international bankers, are responsible for what is now the crisis that Germany faces economically, which in some instances was true, but I mean it certainly just wasn't Jewish financial bankers and financiers. There were a lot of others as well, but basically America, you know, we tried to float Germany the cash. Our economy hit turbulent times. Germany's on the rebuild. They're trying to rebuild after World War One, and then we called in the loans on Germany. We said, oh well, we're hitting a depression. You Germans got to pay your loans, and the Germans are sitting there going, we can't pay. I mean, what do you mean? We can't, we have no choice but to collapse. And then they started to collapse, and there goes the rise of tyranny. And that's what I mean here is
yep,
when
spot on.
when economies start to collapse, or at least when there's the perception that economies are collapsing, it is the predicate for tyranny and war and totalitarianism and so on and so forth. And you're going to see a lot of it break out all across the world.
100%. And for everybody out there, it was the Treaty of Versailles, which basically implemented the aspect where the Germans had to pay all of this money back to the
Yep.
European dynasties. Now, do you know out there who it was that negotiated the Treaty of Versailles? That was the Dulles brothers. Andrew Dulles being obviously that former head of the CIA and the one that actually stood over the Nuremberg trials. He was the same person, the American person that wrote the Treaty of Versailles, making them pay all of that money. So in retrospect, it was one big setup from the beginning. It was all about a transference of power from one world order to a new world order.
You can't say that. That makes you a conspiracy theorist, sir.
100%.
That makes you a conspiracy theorist, and it makes you anti-Semitic. I guess that I'm sure that probably hurt me a lot in the election as well. They called me anti-Semitic from the very beginning, and I said, excuse me, my daughter has an Israelite name. She has a Hebrew name. I can't be anti-Semitic. I say that because anti-Semitism is rooted in language, ethnic language. But it's just these are the games that are still played that I hope this Trump administration and this chapter of American politics will smash through, and some of us real populist candidates can rise up through the bottleneck here and get to DC, because again, people have to realize and remember, we had a crisis of America First representation in the House and the Senate before Donald Trump won.
Mhm.
I mean, clear. There's not 10 America Firsters across the aisle in the United States Senate. I mean, I could count on one hand how many U.S. senators I actually trust.
I don't trust any of them. How about I'll tell you, I
That's
don't
fair.
trust any fucking politician anywhere.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons I like Donald Trump. You know what I like Donald Trump is when every single person on the left and the right stood up against him. When every single media cohort stood against him. When
Yep.
everybody tried to ruin this guy from day one that he announced that he was running. That was the moment I liked Donald Trump, because I realized that he was so anti-establishment, so dangerous to shatter their paradigm of control and power, that this man is going to be unstoppable. And, today I think we're looking at a lot of his cabinet positions, what he's doing. Today we saw, Rubio. Well, guess what? He didn't announce Rubio as Secretary of State. So, Royce, this is interesting. I've been noticing this trend over the last 2 days, or actually over the last week. There's somebody in the Trump campaign that is releasing information out to the news. The New York Post published that today, that Rubio is going to be Secretary of State, but Trump hasn't announced it. We heard that Kash Patel was going to be CIA director, but instead we just found out that Dan Ratcliffe is going to be CIA director. Last week, there was rumor that Mike Pompeo was going to be brought in. He's either Secretary of Defense or Secretary of State. Well, it was interesting because we know that Trump has a massive tech collaboration around him. They understand social media, they understand technology, and they understand that they have to appease the masses to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Last week, when it broke that Pompeo was going to join the administration, immediately on X, we saw Pompeo trending.
Yeah.
And everybody on all sides of the aisle were against Mike Pompeo coming back. And then Donald Trump puts out a comment, says Nikki Haley and Mike Pompeo will not be joining my campaign.
Thank God.
Yep. And then today, Rubio, and then all of a sudden on X, everybody's like, no, absolutely not this pro-Zionist piece of shit warmonger Rubio. We don't want him. You know, Donald Trump said some things about Rubio before. How could he make this choice? Well, it's never confirmed. And so your Secretary of State is not going to be Rubio. And we have to understand that what the Trump campaign is doing is they're leaking this information, the test, how well people are going to accept this information or not accept this information, and making decisions upon, okay, well, if it's not Rubio, who are people thinking for Secretary of State?
Hey, you know, give the people promises made, promises kept. You want to have an America First government. You want to have a government that reflects the will of the people, or the will of the people who voted you in, at least. That's a completely valid way to do it. Yeah. I mean, Marco Rubio, yeah, not my cup of tea. I'll just say that. I like Waltz, their national security advisor. You know, he seems like a hitter. You know, he seems like somebody who's at least a supporter of Trump, and he's at least not willing to mince words about China and the threat of China. So, you know, ultimately, look, the one hill that I hope that we don't die on is the Temple Mount, let's say. I mean, you know, I've said it many times before, and I think I bring what is a very genuine and authentic approach to the questions about the Middle East and Israel, especially as a Christian and somebody who has many, many close Jewish friends, many of which believe in God, and we find common ground on that basis. But one of my friends said to me last week, listen, if the religion of Judaism is so close to Israel's policy, government policy, that I can't criticize the policy, then eventually everybody becomes anti-Semitic. And I think that that's just technically true. I mean, philosophically speaking, and it is actually a detriment to the Jews and to the Jewish people and to the nation of Israel for the entire global community, you could say, or whatever global community is on that side of things, to talk about that issue in that way. I mean, it's not a favor to the Jewish people or to Israel for us to create this weird narrative and conversation that can't be discussed. And again, my Israel policy, like if I had been there in the U.S. Senate, I would have stood up there on the Senate floor and said, the first thing we have to do is get off of every side of the war, of the trade. We're on every side of that war. Don't tell me that we can see who our enemies are and aren't when we're on every side of the trade. That's no easy feat. We can't be on every side of the war and still think we have a good grasp on who our enemies and who our friends are. That's not how it works. The fog of war is already confusing enough, let alone being funded every which end. Okay, and then secondly, don't tell me we're fighting a holy war if the people who are leading the war don't believe in God. And that is a very fundamental thing that we have. And it's not to say that you have to believe in God or not. Just don't tell me it's a holy war. If you want to say that we have strategic national interest in the Middle East for whatever natural resource or whatever else we're there to do, then fine. If you want to say, hey, we need a place to drop bombs on sand to create military inventory turnover so that the military industrial complex can keep its dog bowl full, then say that. But don't tell me we're fighting a holy war and the people who are waging it don't believe in God. That's taking the Lord's name in vain. And ultimately, in this renaissance for America, we have to be very cognizant about those type of transgressions against God, because ultimately God did save Donald Trump's life, and he did give this country a second chance because we were on the brink of being fully consumed by Marxism and communism. So we got to be cognizant around those type of issues.
100%, man. Well said too. the Israel-U.S. aspect of things, I think you said it really well there, is we can't support both sides of this. And a great example of that is giving humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza and then giving missiles and bombs at the same time to Israel.
Yeah. Well, no, it's not. But wait a second. It's not just that. It's what I'm talking about is we give money to Egypt. We give money to the Qataris. We give money to the Yemenis. We give money to Pakistan. We give money to the Abu Dhabi and the Emiratis. And ultimately the biggest double cross and triple cross is that we have no problems with our economic relationship with China, and we know China's going to funnel money to Iran, and we know what Iran's, what Iran's, again, do I think that some people overplay Iran? Yeah, I think they do it for shock and effect. But we can go and listen to Iranian leaders say publicly, death to the West, death to Israel, death to the West, death to America. In fact, one of the Iranian leaders actually said death to the West isn't just a slogan, it's our policy.
Yeah.
So, hey, even my mind starts to work and I start to think, okay, we're paying these people. Are we paying the Iranians to be the controlled opposition so we can continue to perpetuate a conflict in the region, so we can continue with the inventory turnover? I mean, this stuff gets spooky because in my mind, I'm thinking, in what world do the Iranians have the temerity, to the balls to publicly state that their policy is a death to America policy, and we give them money? I mean, don't get me wrong, the Iranians are a formidable force, but never in a, I mean, let's be honest. When the Iranians and the rest of these Arab countries stood up after October 7th and these wars broke out in the region, and Erdogan, he said East versus West, cross versus the crescent. He's hanging on to a couple nukes of ours as well. But when all these people stood up and said they were going to throw down, as soon as our aircraft carriers rolled into the Mediterranean, everybody got real quiet and real, let's say, negotiable. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And so, even the narrative there I start to question it. And my whole point is, we're on every side of the trade there. I mean, every side possible. The Palestinians and what's going on in Gaza, obviously, that's a tragedy. It's horrible what's going on there. But I mean, all around that region, we're just invested in funding every side of that war. And it goes back to this thinking of our British, our British. I saw a post today. This blew my mind again. I saw a post today where somebody said or asked a question, because JD Vance made a comment that the UK is going to be the first Islamist Western nation or something like that, right? And somebody put a question on X and they said, should we invade the UK and liberate them from Islam? And I just thought to myself, these people still think that we're British. These people still think we're European. They still believe in this idea of the West. I mean, this shit runs deep, man. We are not European. Look, I'm not African American. I'm Black. I'm American. I'm not African American. I'm not African. I'm Black. You're not European. You're not European American. You're white. And Black people and white people and the Hispanic people that are here that are American, we're the backbone of this country. We're the fabric of this country. Anybody who thinks we should go and get into another kinetic conflict on the European continent and the UK against what? Civilian insurgents? Because the British wanted to let all these illegal immigrants come into their country? I mean, what are people? And there were 50,000 likes. I almost shit my pants. Reading it, I was thinking to myself, what are you people thinking? You're not European. But my point, and the whole reason I'm bringing that up is our foreign policy. We don't have any authentic foreign policy in this country. Our entire foreign policy is British foreign policy. We're fighting a war in the Sino-Japanese theater. That's British foreign policy. We're fighting a war in the Middle East. That's British foreign policy. We're fighting a war right there in the heartland. That's British foreign policy. Can America get an authentic foreign policy? I hope out of this 4-year term, the one thing that comes of it is that we actually come out of the other side with the authentic American foreign policy.
Love it. I 100% agree with you on everything there. And we have to rebuild our culture because our culture has been severely damaged. And I think that is one of the primary parts. You know, you were mentioning before the boomers, and I think that this is a good perspective for everybody to have out there. During the Cold War, Americans believed in this idea, this vision of what the Russians were, who the Ruskies were. And after it was all said and done, we realized that the Russians were feeding their people massive propaganda and psychological war operations about how the Americans were. But yet, no boomer, no person who grew up through the Cold War wants to accept that your government did the same thing to you. That it was all an illusion of perception. It was all a creation, a myth to keep on the propagation of the war machine going and well funded and well greased. And that the Middle Eastern wars that Royce was just talking about, go look at Libya, go look at Yemen, go look at all of these mass terrorist organizations that came about: ISIS, ISIL, Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah. All of these guys are proxy creations of the Western intelligence operating with the Mossad, US CIA, and Mossad operating within those regions, pumping in actual cash and weapons.
Whoa, dude, you can't say that, dude.
Oh, I can say that.
We're going on a list, my guy. We're going on a list. You say stuff like
there.
that. No, we're on the list already, obviously.
Yeah.
But that's 100% spot on. It's just funny to me. I brought that up, and it's so shocking to me because the American, look, Donald Trump was able to synthesize a message that did enough for us to win along the margins in the swing states we needed to. And that's praise be to God. We got a foothold now. But in order for us to have any long-term sustained victory and to really rebuild this country back over the same 50 or 60 years that it's been broken and undermined and rotted out, we have to elevate and evolve the baseline understanding of your average American citizen. I mean, we have to do that. If we don't do that, we will lose because the Russians are doing it. The Chinese are doing it. Their people understand that this is a geopolitical jump ball. This is a jump ball for the future. It's not about right now. So if we can't talk to if I can't talk to the people of Minnesota about these issues, about foreign policy, and help them understand how we've been, basically sandbagged and bled dry by some of these policies, we will lose. We will lose. And you can't, a lot of these boomers, I mean, God bless them. You cannot talk to these people about there's such a legacy hold of these narratives that were, I don't know, disseminated in black and white television in the early 50s and 60s. I mean, these narratives are so milquetoast. They're so egregiously false. I was in a meeting with Republican Party, members in my own campaign meeting, and the average age, the average age was probably 55 and up, 60. And this was the week that the comment came out where I said the bad guys won World War II. And I just asked the people in the meeting, is anybody readily familiar with the fact that the Russians were a communist totalitarian regime that genocided 20 million Christians, under their rule? And everybody kind of looked and they kind of nodded like, yeah, I remember hearing something about that. But it wasn't at the tip of their tongue. It wasn't at the forefront of their thinking. And so, like, we have been mistold history, and it's all predicated around World War II. I mean, it really is. The World War II event is the bedrock of what most boomers think of in terms of foreign policy and military and government and economic construction. And we have got to start to break that mold. That's the next mold. And Donald Trump tried to do it. I mean, Donald Trump knows he's not shilling for it. When he threatened NATO, he's poking right at the heart of that post-World War II Democrat liberal order. He's not saying it all at once, and God bless him. Maybe he's a better orator than I am. I just go straight down the middle. And that's why even in the Republican Party of Minnesota, even in the MAGA movement, some of these MAGA content creators and influencers are deathly afraid of me because they know I don't mess around with like they call it the decorations. The French say the accoutrement. I don't play around with the accoutrement. We just go straight down the middle. The whole thing is a fucking scam. It's a scam. We got to pull out of that thing right now, right here, right now, before we get, hung over some debt cliff, or we get pulled into some crazy quagmire war again. When even Tim Scott, like Tim Scott. Tim Scott's a good. Give me a break. When I heard Tim Scott say we need to be ready to fight a war on 3 fronts on the Eurasian landmass, I knew right then he was a neocon. He can say what he wants. I'm just not buying it, dude. We're not fighting a 3-front war on the Eurasian landmass. The conventional wisdom used to be, don't get into a land war in Asia. And now we're going to fight a 3-front war in Asia? I mean, you people are ridiculous.
I'm a strict Ron Paul supporter from back in the day, and I'm a strict interventionist. I served in the United States military, right?
Yeah.
I did 10 years. I saw what was going on in Washington, D.C., my last duty station. We need to pull everything home, like Ron Paul said. We need to stop this endless spending, the $1 trillion, $1.3 trillion defense budget. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
World War II. So I'm a history buff. I love going through history. I love going from the Revolutionary War to the present date American history, understanding the dynamics of what created it. I love what you're saying about World War II. My audience already knows this. Yes,
Right.
The Germans were fighting the Russians. That was the whole thing. There was, I will say it, it's my podcast, and hopefully this doesn't get affiliated with you because I don't think it will.
Okay.
So when in the military, I was in a school and we were talking about military advanced strategies. And one of the instructors, who was a 06 in the U.S. Navy, talked about what happened on the turning point of the war, of how the Allied forces began to defeat the Nazis. Now, the Nazis were really, really smart. They put all of their military bases far, far, far away from any major city. So they put them out in the middle of the woods. And the only way into them was through railroad tracks. And what they did is they took all of their prisoners, the Jews, and they put them in these military bases and camps. And they never thought for a moment that the West would bomb those bases, because they knew that it would kill the prisoners as well. What the West did is they bombed the railroad tracks, the supply lines, into the military bases, which was also into the prison camps,
Right.
which means that if you have no water and no food coming into a military camp and you have prisoners there, who's going to get fed? The soldiers are going to get fed. The soldiers are going to get water. The prisoners are going to starve and not get water. And that there was actually internal documentation of the German soldiers talking about this, of how all of their prisoners were dying of dehydration and dying of malnutrition, and they were going to give them a quick death to end their suffering. And so when you look at the Holocaust, of how they talk about the Holocaust today, the actual point is that the West bombed the supply lines that caused much of the Holocaust to actually occur. And they knew that that was going to be one of the consequences of it. But they did that to win the war, obviously, to take part.
Some of it.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the Holocaust deaths, for sure. And it's a part that doesn't go talked about, but that gets skimmed over for sure. And that's that's a slick little maneuver for the Western, arrogance that we hold about World War II. But even the flip side of that coin is Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, Ukraine is the ugly dark corner of Nazism there in World War II, and that's another one that's gone down the memory hole. Right? Is you got Bobby Yair right there in Ukraine, where 33,000 Jews were killed in 72 hours with small arms. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, hey, we're going to give them as much money as they need. No problem. The Ukrainians, look, the Russians are such a detestable people and culture, stemming all the way back to the Stalin Soviet Union and the real Red Scare of communism. They're so detestable that we have to fight a perpetual war with them no matter what. There's no peace, no negotiations, no matter what, based on that history. But a history that's right there around the corner in Ukraine, nobody even talks about.
No.
I mean, it's just these people think we're all stupid, or they get us fighting about the details, and they get one group on one side of an argument, the other group on the other side, while they make off with all the money. And I'm not going for it. So
Well, that's right. In World War II, the Ukrainians had a movement. The Banderites, Stefan Banderite, Banderino, I think his name was, and he rose up. He ended up joining the Nazi regiments, bringing Ukraine into it, and they were responsible for over 670,000 deaths in Polish concentration camps at the hands of Ukrainian Nazis.
Right.
After
Right.
the war, it was the Ukraine that the CIA went into and utilized and funded to be the
Yes.
anti-Soviet country
Yes.
that go in there and fight the Red Soviets, and they
Which
were
they
funded
were
by the CIA.
which they were willing to do happily because the Ukrainian in their defense, and I don't mean in their defense, but when you look at the totality of how conflicts comes about, that line right there is a fault line. A lot of those countries in the Eastern Bloc were willing to go and run counterintelligence on the Russians because they had generations of people who had lived through Bolshevik revolution. They had generations of people who had suffered under that Bolshevik, Russian communist genocide in that region. So when the chance arose, Hitler was a strategic dude. He said, "Oh well, and when I cross over Ukraine to go into Russia, who are the Ukrainians more likely to join, me or the Russians that they had suffered under, under the Bolshevik Revolution?" So the point is, what does it have to do with America? This shit has nothing to do with us. That fight that they're fighting there is centuries old. It's a fault line. It's a clan war. It's got nothing to do with us. It's got nothing to do with the black people that live in Flint, Michigan. It has nothing to do with the white folks that live in East Palestine, Ohio. It's got nothing to do with us. And what are we doing over there? I mean, it's just like
So
this.
good call.
Yeah.
100% good point. Here's what it has to do with us is that it's an outlet for the establishment machine to launder U.S. taxpayer dollars in the billions over to a foreign country. That foreign country distributes it to various different banks. Within 6 months, those banks will be belly up, allows them to take out IMF loans. That money originally allows them to take IMF loans, which therefore enrich NGOs, NPOs. That money then gets distributed to NPOs, NGOs, and then that circles back around right into Washington, D.C., and back into the pockets of politicians in the campaigns and in the PACs.
Money laundering, right.
Money laundering. It's the greatest scam ever done to the American people.
And they're going to make, not only they laundering the money, they're going to make you pay the interest. They're going to make you pay interest on the interest. I mean, these people are brazen, aren't they? I mean, not only are they going to steal your tax money, they're going to make you pay interest on the interest. I mean, wow! If the American people really understood the economic implications of it, we wouldn't even be having elections. People would just be going to pitchforks. But we're so gum dipped, and the convenience is so good of technology that's the real brilliance and genius of what they've created is. And I say this on my podcast tonight, starting here in about 15 minutes. The real fight that we have going forward is not about nationalism and globalism. That's an obvious one. We have to have a border. We have to have a country. The reason why they could let Donald Trump win, and I do think that they let him win because they obviously pulled back on the cheating, right? I mean, that's obvious. There's 10, 12 million votes missing from the overall total. They pulled back on the cheating. They knew that everybody was watching. They can see the backside of the algorithms and the metrics and the data. They knew that everybody was drifting towards, more towards Donald Trump, and it would have spoiled all the last credibility of the institutions had they cheated him in front of everybody. So they pulled back on the cheating. They let him win. And the reason they can let him win is, one, they think they can wait him out because we have a short bench in the MAGA movement, i.e., people like Marco Rubio. I mean, that's a short bench. When we got to go to Marco Rubio, we're grasping at straws already. So people like me who are real America First pipe hitters, we're kind of persona non grata because the establishment thinks, even the MAGA establishment thinks we're too extreme, right? So we got a short bench here. They think that they can wait Donald Trump out. They think he can't do so much damage that is completely irreparable. We'll rely on the Supreme Court that we fenced as being ultra conservative. Really, 5-4 vote on letting illegal immigrants vote in an election tells you everything you need to know about the conservative nature of our Supreme Court. Right. Letting Bannon get thrown in jail on some BS charges from a trumped up Jan 6 committee tells you everything you need to know about the Supreme Court. So they think they can wait him out, stymie his agenda with a bunch of rhinos and neocons they know are in the House and Senate. And the reason why the reason why they can wait him out is the technological progression of our society is still going full speed.
Yeah.
The fourth industrial revolution is their agenda. The fourth industrial revolution is what the goal is. Automation, there it is, right there.
Easy
Automation,
bugs.
yes, sir. Automation, AI, surveillance, robotics, genetics. This is what their real agenda is. That agenda is hurling ahead full speed, and that's what I hope. If I can add any any insight for the Trump administration on what we really have to be focused on and fighting. Obviously, Elon Musk will as well, but see, there things get tricky with Elon because Elon stands a lot to benefit from the rise of the fourth industrial revolution himself, and
Same
so
with Peter Thiel.
that's true, right? So now when we get down into things, we're kind of in a Mexican standoff, and for good reason. Good Mexican standoff has to happen every now and then, in a turning. So we'll see how everything shakes out. But the fourth industrial revolution is coming, and that's why they think they can wait them out. That's why they could let them win because the technology is progressing scary fast.
And I'm a firm believer at the end of the day, what we have to do is we have to get rid of the aspect of social engineering and psychological warfare. And we have to transform culture back into a moral and ethical base that is based upon this family first, this American first. We have to bring back true American values. And it starts in the household, which expands to the community, which expands to the state, which expands to the federal government. And that's the only way that we're going to have long-term survival within the American first movement. So Royce, I know you have to get on your show here. So I'm going to let you go, man. Awesome conversation. I appreciate you coming on, man.
Appreciate it, brother.
And I hope
we'll do it again whenever.
Yeah. I hope you're going to come back on, and everybody can find you at roycewhite.us. That's ROYCEWHITE.us for all those listening on the audio version of this podcast. Royce, appreciate you, my friend. Take care. We'll see you next time, man.
Godspeed to you, sir.
You as well, bro. All right, guys. Royce White, awesome guest. Love talking to him. And man, he's a history buff just like me. I appreciate it. Freaking awesome. Make sure you guys go out there and you visit, subscribe, and keep updated with Royce and everything that Royce is doing. And then now we are going to get into the nitty gritty. Let's get into some information here. I want you guys to see this. Oh yeah, we're going to continue to go on, guys. This show isn't done. We're just doing the interview, the first half. Now it's time to get into the news. So I want to show you guys this clip here. Oh yeah. This is Kamala Harris today. And that's Jill Biden that you're seeing over there. And I'm going to blow this up. That right there is your proof and evidence that they don't like each other. Kamala does not like Jill, and Jill absolutely fucking hates Kamala. Now, why? Well, there's a good reason why. I bet you Kamala is blaming Jill Biden for the loss of the election. But we know what really happened here, right? All right, MSNBC and CNN ratings have plummeted post-election while Fox News still thrives. Fox News surged with 2.6 million viewers last Thursday, up 60% over year, while CNN and MSNBC faced steep declines, down 40% and 23%. If that's any indication of what is happening right now in the world, there is a massive transition away from the mainstream media. People are moving towards alternative media, specifically social media and podcasts. So welcome everybody who's coming into the podcast. If you are new here, subscribe, guys. Make sure you guys subscribe, hit those bell notification buttons, get in on what we are got going over here at the Red Pill Project at the Daily Dose. I love having you guys out here. If you are watching on x.com, make sure you go over mine and Royce's profile and give that a follow. I had some good posts on X today. I hope that people do check them out. I will be talking about one of them specifically in my next daily brief. I already put one out today. I'm probably going to put another one out. If you guys are wondering what Josh's daily brief is, Josh's daily brief is a subscription broadcast, 10, 15, 20 minutes. Sometimes you get 2 a day. You're going to have at least 5 a week, and you can find those at redpillproject.substack.com, redpillproject.substack.com. You can also find them at socialredpill.com, which comes with all of our Zooms and everything like that, socialredpill.com. Or you can find it at Locals. If you're on Rumble, you can go to redpillproject.locals.com, or you can just go to that link below right over there on Rumble and find that. But we are the alternative media, and we are redefining the idea of information. And that's what this whole war and battle is about. It's about bringing back that culture that is American, or redefining what that culture is that American. Because, over the last 50 to 60 years, that has been the result of psychological warfare operations, of MK Ultra style attacks on the American citizens to, in a sense, we don't even know what our own culture is. Now it's time to build culture, and I'm excited to actually be a part of this. I'm excited to be a part of the world that no longer trusts government or politicians, but instead we look at those anti-establishment figures as the ones that should lead, because you know what? At the end of the day, they have the best ideas, and they have the most impactful methodology to go in there and bring about change. So interesting time to be alive. Look, we're still dealing with election fraud from the 2024 general election. RNC Chair Michael Whately is accusing Bucks County, Pennsylvania, of breaking the law by counting undated and incorrectly dated ballots in the race won by Senator-elect David McCormick. We have fought and beat Bucks County in court before, prepared again. They're trying to beat David McCormick. They're trying to bring in new ballots and everything like that to defeat him. It's not going to happen. The RNC is on top of it. Another one, GOP Senate candidate Eric Hovde of Wisconsin says he was ahead at election night, but then suddenly lost the lead when his opponent won nearly 99% of ballots dumped at 4 a.m. in Milwaukee. Hovde also said he's been reached out to about precincts in Milwaukee having over a 200% return. He also pointed to a Democrat third-party plant who swiped enough votes away from potential GOP voters to prevent Hovde from winning. If either of these candidates had not been in the race, the outcome would be different today. Is it right or fair to deceive voters? What happened in this election does not inspire confidence in our process. And he is out there trying to make a statement, and absolutely so. We're seeing ample evidence of voter fraud in the 2024 election. And it's my hopes that Congress does immediately open up investigations, and the Donald Trump administration, through maybe the Department of Government Efficiency, it should also be government efficiency and transparency, I think. But does investigate these types of things. And they have, sweeping power to go in and radically change this and prosecute people. Evidence. This is from Patrick Kolbeck. Secretary of State in Michigan, Jocelyn Benson, reported a glitch. Explanation for 125,428 illegal votes in Minnesota does not pass the sniff test. Investigation into the voters cited in a Michigan SOS daily cast ballot report as having cast multiple votes revealed that many of the duplicate votes were associated with places those voters never lived. This indicates that some with access to the Michigan Qualified Voter File, QVF, has assigned the same voter ID to multiple locations, including locations the voter never lived at. Furthermore, examination of the regional distribution to population across the entire state of Michigan, indicating machine-based manipulation. In other words, there is growing evidence to support the assertion that the Michigan election databases were manipulated to enable the casting of 125,428 illegal votes. It is becoming very clear that the Michigan Secretary of State classified a report as a glitch should be classified as election fraud. We have to get to the bottom of this, people. We have to uncover this. If we don't uncover this, it'll just happen again, and it'll never get uncovered, and it'll just be this continuous cycle. And Royce is right when he believes that the Democrats kind of conceded. I don't think that they conceded. I think they actually tried to cheat, but the rug got pulled out of them. But the Republicans right now have a short bench. We have a short bench of America First candidates, in the sense that by 2026 and 2028, this momentum could easily die down. If we allow the mainstream propaganda to take over, the Democrat liberal Marxist agenda to take over once again, this momentum will die out like it did in 2018. We have to keep it going. We have to be progressive out in our states, out in our towns, our cities. We are the ones that have to go out and run for county board. We school boards. We have to run for mayor. We have to run for state houses. It's us that need to do that. And if you're sitting there going right now, like me, I can see John Rader going, me? Yeah, you. Get up, get out, start doing it, start working on how to do it, because it's you, me, and everybody else, and it's America first, are the ones that are going to save this country. And it starts here today. It starts with our hometowns. It starts with our villages, our cities. It starts with our house and our community. It starts with our schools. We have to be on those boards. We have to be in those house positions in order to implement the change that we wish to see in the world, guys. That's how it begins. Now, you heard about the FEMA employee who put out an email to her staff telling them to skip any houses with Trump signs per leadership. Well, she was fired. Well, guess what? She might have been fired, but now she's speaking. I love it. Fired FEMA official who they blame for sending out correspondence to avoid Trump supporters' houses has come forth. He is now going to blow the whistle on the whole operation. Hopefully, Congress has requested that FEMA preserve all records and emails. They have. And what we're finding out is that people above her are the ones that dictated that, and people above them are the ones that dictated that. And they probably came down all the way from Kamala Harris, pretty sure. All right. Judge Merchant has delayed the ruling on Donald Trump's business records case. Trump, who pleaded not guilty to 34 counts of first-degree falsifying business records, was found guilty on May after a 6-week trial. This has been delayed again. People are saying that Donald Trump's going to go to jail. Donald Trump's going to go to jail. Guess what? Donald Trump is not going to jail. Judge Merchant is going to find a way to get rid of this case, to not sentence Donald Trump, including potentially even throwing out all the charges. I'm telling you, it's going to happen. It's going, trust me. It's going to happen. If Donald Trump gets sentenced to jail, you're going to see a revolution in this country. But it's not going to happen. All right. Trump's new cabinet action-focused teams take shape. Trump moving swiftly with strategically to build his second administration, learning from his first term's challenges. So we're seeing different types of people. We talked about Tom Horman coming in. We have Pete Hegseth for defense secretary. I was kind of skeptical on Pete at first. Fox News correspondent, a major in the U.S. Army National Guard. And then I saw this video of him on the Sean Ryan podcast, and I immediately began to like him. So let's watch this clip real quick.
The Pentagon is in the book, the exact amount of years, but in the past X number of years, 10, 12, 15, the Pentagon has a perfect record in all of its war games against China. We lose every time inside the Pentagon war games. We know what our real capability. You see, we didn't even get to this part of the war on warriors. I mean, the military-industrial complex, the way we procure weapon systems. We're always, the way our system works, the way our bureaucratic system works, where the speed of weapons procurement works, we're always a decade behind in fighting the last war. Whereas China, we have, what did Rumsfeld say? You go to the war, the army you have. We have the army. China's building an army specifically dedicated to defeating the United States of America. That is their strategic outset. Take hypersonic missiles. So if our whole power projection platform is aircraft carriers and the ability to project power that way strategically around the globe, and yeah, we have a nuclear triad and all of that, but a big part of it. And if 15 hypersonic missiles can take out our 10 aircraft carriers in the first 20 minutes of a conflict, what does that look like?
Wow.
I mean, and if they've already got us by the balls economically, which you pointed out very well, with our grid, culturally, there's plenty of elite capture going on around the globe. I mean, and then microchips and everything. Why do they want Taiwan? They want to corner the market completely on the technological future. We can't even drive our cars without the stuff we need out of China these days. I mean, they have a full spectrum, long-term view of not just regional but global domination, and we have our heads up our asses.
Yeah.
And
it's this post right here that I believe is the reason why Donald Trump picked Pete. I swear. If I was Donald Trump and I heard that man talking, I'd be like, I got to get that guy to the Department of Defense, and he's got to revamp the whole fucking system. Pete gained a lot of respect from me by that, and now I'm happy that he is the selection for Secretary of Defense. Is there better, more qualified people who understand the Pentagon? Yeah, there are. But guess what? They are insiders. Pete is an outsider. And I think that this is the perspective we have to see with Donald Trump's nominees that are coming in, is that he's putting people who are outsiders in critical positions, like Pete. I don't know if Pete's ever been to the Pentagon. I'm assuming he hasn't, but he's studied and learned as much as he possibly can about it. He's not a former general who was stationed at the Pentagon half of their career. He's a combat veteran. But what he's going to go in and do with the DOD is he's going to make the Department of Defense the vision of what he believes the Department of Defense should be. Not the vision of what a four-star general believes that the Department of Defense should be per government contractors or the war machine. So I like this pick of him. I think it's hands down probably the best pick that I've seen so far, besides Dan Ratcliffe going to director of the Central Intelligence Agency. If you guys remember, DNI Ratcliffe, the director of national intelligence, Ratcliffe was the one who started all of the inquiries into UAPs, who brought Trump the whole executive order for the 180 days of disclosure from Congress, because Ratcliffe himself couldn't do it because of all the classification around it. Now you have Ratcliffe actually going to the source of one of the top, most classified programs in our government pertaining to UFO recovery, UAP recovery, and reverse technology. Ratcliffe, so we're going to see that whole fucking department. So fantastic. Ratcliffe was great. Now, I truly do believe the Trump campaign is leaking their own information, but they're leaking bad information out there to see what the reaction is from people. So Rubio as Secretary of State, I don't think that this has been confirmed. I don't think he's even going to be Secretary of State. I think my pick is going to be Rick Grinnell. I think Rick Grinnell is going to come in. He is a staunch Trump loyalist. Rubio is not. Trump does not want to surround himself by non-Trump loyalists. We have Kristi Noem coming in as Director of the Department of Homeland Security, Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. I'm kind of taken back by this one. Not my first, 5th, 10th, or 20th choice, unless she is being brought in to dismantle much of it and consolidate it and run it like a state. I think that might be the case that we're seeing here. Stefanik and Huckabee, they're not even like power positions in the sense of the cabinet. Nothing I'm really concerned about. Now, this was an interesting statement by Donald Trump. I am pleased to announce, and you guys follow the narrative that I've been putting you out there on with Elon and Peter Thiel, and why it's so important that Trump is surrounding himself with Silicon Valley businessmen. I am pleased to announce the great Elon Musk, working in conjunction with American patriot Vivek Ramaswamy, will lead the Department of Government Efficiency. Together, these two wonderful Americans will pave the way for my administration to dismantle government bureaucracy, slash excess regulations, cut wasteful expenditures, and restructure federal agencies essential to the Save the America movement. This will send shockwaves through the system, and anyone involved in government waste, which is a lot of people, slated to Mr. Musk, it will become potentially the Manhattan Project of our time. The Manhattan Project? The Manhattan Project was the top secret clandestine creation of Los Alamos and bringing in Nazi German scientists along with American scientists and Nobel laureates, including Albert Einstein, to create the atom bomb. This will potentially be the Manhattan Project of our time. Is he saying that this is going to be the mother of all bombs of our time? Or is he saying that this program's going to go in and strategically reduce the size of the federal government? Currently, there are 23,470,000 government employees. If Elon Musk eliminates 80% of that, that's 18,776,000 government employees gone. What does that also mean? That's going to be 18.7 million unemployed people in the United States. So that's not going to be good for Donald Trump. But let's imagine this. If you start cutting the Department of Homeland Security, you just get rid of the Department of Education. If you start cutting the Department of Justice, if you start consolidating, we got things like the ATF, we got DHS, we got the DOJ, we got the FBI. We have a lot of different police in a lot of different sectors. Why don't you consolidate that all? This is what they're going to do. And when you start to do that, specifically in the DOD, and you remove 17 intelligence agencies, we have 18 intelligence agencies. They're going to consolidate that down to 1. What does that do? All those secrets get squeezed out. How do you get the D-class of all the UAP information? How do you get all this advanced technology out of the black programs? Is you don't only cut their budget, is you eliminate that whole department division that was operating it to begin with. So there is no way to sneak money around the corner. You put it under something completely new. The whole New Manhattan Project, I think, is yeah, it's the mother of all bombs, but it has multiple different meanings. The meaning here being, we're going to find out what's behind the curtain. We are going to find out what's behind curtain number 2. Now, it came out that Kash Patel potentially was going to be director of the CIA. This is what I mean by the Trump administration is leaking this information to see how people react to it. Now, Kash Patel did not get CIA director. He did not get Secretary of Defense. I wonder where prosecutor Kash Patel is going to go. 2 places I think Kash Patel is going to get placed in the Trump administration V2. Number 1 position I want him at, and I think he's got a good chance of getting it, is Attorney General. You imagine Kash Patel as Attorney General? You remember the Punisher socks that he was always wearing? Makes sense now, huh? Kash Patel as Attorney General. Or Kash Patel will be Director of the FBI. I think that he's going to be Attorney General or Director of the FBI. One of those 2. That's where they're going to put him. So we just talked about Ratcliffe. I think this is a great appointment by Donald Trump. I'm going to play a short little video of Radcliffe for you. They kind of make you understand that what Donald Trump is doing strategically is he's placing certain people in certain positions that is going to bring about disclosure. You're going to have Pete Hegseth in the DOD. This means that the SecDef is not going to block declassification. The CIA director is not going to block declassification. The DNI is not going to block declassification. He's getting around it all. Now, check this out.
There's now a report that will be issued by the Pentagon, by the Secretary of Defense and the Director of National Intelligence. I actually wanted to get this information out and declassified before I left office, but we weren't able to get it down into an unclassified format that we could talk about quickly enough. But frankly, there are a lot more sightings than have been made public. Some of those have been declassified. When we talk about sightings, we're talking about objects that have been seen by Navy or Air Force pilots or have been picked up by satellite imagery that frankly engage in actions that are difficult to explain, that movements that are hard to replicate, that we don't have the technology for, or traveling at speeds that exceed the sound barrier without a sonic boom. So in short, things that we are observing that are difficult to explain. And so, there's actually quite a few of those, and I think that information is being gathered and will be put out in a way that the American people can see.
That's going to be your director of the Central Intelligence Agency. Do you think he's going to go in there and start gutting the CIA, dismantling its infrastructure, and getting that shit out? I think he's going to do it. I'm hoping he's going to do it. This is a good one. The Trump transition team is drafting an executive order to create a warrior board of retired senior military personnel with the authority to review and recommend removal of 3- and 4-star generals deemed unfit for leadership or woke. Now, my first thoughts on this one is that General Michael Flynn is going to be the one who heading this warrior board. This sounds exactly like something out of General Flynn's mind. And so you'll have General Kellogg, you'll have General Flynn, and you'll probably have a few others. But I think that that's where General Flynn is going to be. He's going to be overseeing this warrior board and doing this. What else do we got here? This is great. Listen to Steve Bannon right here, because I think that this is probably the best 15, 20 seconds of the day.
Your thoughts, particularly the Defense Department, where right now they're going through and they have their lawyers saying, oh, we really got to figure out what's a lawful order. Didn't we go through this with Milley? And my strongest recommendation to the president, I think Mike Davis would support this, is to on day one, recall General Milley to active duty, which the president's commander-in-chief has full authority to recall him to active duty and make him face a court-martial. Court-martial him. And let's see what a military tribunal says about Milley's activity as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff from June of, let's pick some random dates, from June of 2020 until the 19th, the 20 high noon on the 20th of January of 2021. Eric Prince, your thoughts?
I hope that happens. And Steve Bannon is 100% correct. What Bannon's actually talking about there is specifically a phone call that Mark Milley made on October 31st, 2020 to his counterpart in China, telling him, this is recorded, by the way, transcribed, that don't worry, Donald Trump will not be reelected. How did he know? Assured him it wasn't going to happen. And so this is the kind of things that I hope that General Flynn comes in and takes care of, but Donald Trump does recall him and holds him on a military tribunal or court-martial, which will lead to tribunal. House Speaker Johnson, along with Republican leadership and committee chairs, have sent letters to the Biden-Harris administration cabinet secretaries demanding the preservation of all documents and communications as they prepare for the transition of the incoming Trump administration. Remember when we said, we got it all? Oh, we got it all. Interesting time to be alive, people. Tomorrow, U.S. Navy Admiral's bombshell UAP testimony, near collisions covered up, emails vanished. There is going to be some interesting things happening with the testimony tomorrow. I highly recommend you watch it. If I can find it and get it broadcast, I will put it out there. My thoughts on it is just wait. It's going to get much, much, much better. By the end of 2025, you will know the truth. From what I'm gathering, by 2025, you're going to know the truth. Guys, a few different things. Firstly, appreciate you. Love all of you. You guys are amazing. Subscribe, like, and share. If you're out there on any of these platforms watching, give it a thumbs up, give it a like, give it a love, whatever you have to give it. Give it a heart. I don't care. Give it something, but it's free. Give it. Follow and subscribe. For all my people on X, I do the Red Pill Daily Briefs. These are right now on Substack, Locals, and Social Red Pill, which is my private social network. Soon it will be coming to X. We're gonna get the subscriptions up there, so you can get into my. It's $5 a month for the subscription, so you can get on the Daily Brief. I do sometimes 2 of those a day, sometimes 1 of those. They're pretty cool. I do in-depth analysis. If there's any topics that people want to hear, deep dive conversations, Josh, talk about the Mandela effect. Josh, talk about the East India Company and the formation of the United States of America. Let me know. I would love to do those specific topics, and we can do them within the Red Pill Daily Briefs. If you guys want to help support us in any way, shape, or form, and it definitely does help, visit right there, redpills.tv. Right when you go in there, you're going to see all different types of ways to support us. There's PayPal, Cash App. If you want to make a donation, Give, Send, Go campaign, redpills.tv/go. Or you can go check out our sponsors, our top sponsor right here. Love these guys. They're amazing. They're doing amazing work. what I want you to do, if you guys are using the Pet Club 247 products, the immune modulating mushrooms that you see right here, redpills.tv, that are having profound effects with people who are going through chemotherapy or people with cancer and tumors. These things have amazing benefits for that, peer-reviewed studies out there pertaining to that, as well as your pets and your animals with all different types of immune conditions and skin and hair and nutrition and bone density, all this different stuff. If you guys got testimonials, send them to me. Send them to me. So firstly, if you haven't tried them, redpills.tv/mushroom, go check them out. But if you got testimonials, send them here. This is my personal email address right there. Personal email address, redpillprojectonline@gmail.com. Send them to me. All right. Guys, I appreciate you. You guys are amazing. And if there's anything that we can do to make all of this better, you just let me know. I'm working on quite a few things right now. I've been working on a lot of things for a long time. But I appreciate all of you. Hope you guys all have a great night. I'm going to see you back tomorrow night with another episode of the Red Pill Project's Daily Dose. And tomorrow night, it should just be me and you. No guests tomorrow night. So much love, respect. God bless. Take care. Have a great night. We'll see you next time.
Do not try and bend the spoon. That's impossible. Only try to realize the truth.
What truth?
There is no spoon.